Whoa. Okay, so we are working through John, and some good news, bad news. The good news is we're in an awesome set of chapters. John 13 to 17 has been called the Holy of Holies, just because of the beautiful richness in this little period where Jesus is preparing his disciples for what's coming. He shares about himself and the Father and the Spirit and what life in them is supposed to look like. So it's an amazing passage. More good news, you're going to be engaged and participating. Bad news is you're actually doing the work. Isn't that awesome? No napping. So John 16. There it is. Can you just take that in a moment? Yep, good job. As I looked at it, I realised it's actually bookended by some statements where Jesus says, I'm telling you this stuff so that you won't fall away, and I'm telling you this stuff so that you'll take heart. These things. And what these things are is really that the Holy Spirit is coming. And that's going to be awesome. Well, what did his hearers already know about the Holy Spirit? What did they know from the Old Testament? Well, the Hebrew word ruach, breath or wind, translated spirit, in English talks about this aspect of God, a holy aspect of God. It gave wisdom, it gave counsel and might. So like guidance, insight, understanding, and then the power, enabling. It gave understanding and the fear of the Lord. It was active in creation, and it made prophecy possible. Essentially, God at work in the world. But brief, sort of transient, almost apparently random, indwelling for a purpose. But the promise that there was a day coming when it wouldn't be this sporadic, limited, brief, specific indwelling, but there would be an outpouring of the Spirit for God's people. So, in John, Jesus adds to the story and he gives the Holy Spirit a new name. Para, meaning alongside, kletos, to call, literally one that is called alongside. So what it originally meant was, you know when you get arrested and you get one phone call? Usually you call your lawyer. So this idea of a legal advocate that you called alongside. But it's one of those words that grew in its meaning to include one that encouraged, one that comforted, one that consoled, one that uplifted, refreshed, empowered. Apart from a lawyer, can you think of another example of that in action? A friend you might call? Yep.
A mother.
A mother you might call when you're sick and you just want your mother. I know that feeling. Yep. You see it in sports sometimes, in football when the one side's short and they're screaming for their defenders to come across and cover. Any other time you might call a support person?
A chaplain in a hospital.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah, a friend.
Advisors to the king with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone been through labour? Did you call someone? It's a privilege to be a support person in labour. I've not really been one, but Karen has, and it's awesome to be called. So that idea of being called. There's a movie quiz show about a true story about a time in America when there was a very popular TV quiz show, and then there was very good-looking, charismatic character that had a record run, and the public loved him. But the producers wanted him to stay on, and in order to do that, they started giving him answers. And at the beginning, he wouldn't accept them, but then over time, he took them. And then there was a congressional inquiry and it all hit the media, and he was to give his evidence to the inquiry, and he wanted to tell the truth. So he went and asked his dad to come with him. Just a lovely picture of that, calling alongside for encouragement. Okay, Jesus says He'll give us another paraclete. What does that mean? There's two. You've already had one. Who was the first one? Him. He was the first paraclete. So if you're wondering what a paraclete looks like, it looks like Jesus. If you're wondering what a paraclete does, it did what Jesus did. The other important thing is, you'll know Him. He has lived with you, but He's going to be in you. So how has He lived with them? Well, Jesus has lived with them, which meant the Spirit has lived with them. But a time is coming when He's going to be in them. So what's so good about this Holy Spirit coming? Well, essentially 4 dimensions in this chapter, and I've put them into a grid. He's going to guide you into truth. So there's some amazing Trinity theology here. Jesus says that the Spirit will reveal to you everything that He's gotten from me, which is everything that the Father's given to me, which is everything the Father has. So that's pretty awesome, isn't it? And He's going to reveal it to you. So He's going to lead you into truth. He's going to give you joy. You're going to be really distressed, anguished, sad, but it's going to turn into a kind of joy that is abundant and unshakable. So there's a joy coming that cannot be touched by circumstances, cannot be taken away from you. I have been an intercessory between you and the Father. I have had to ask on your behalf, but there's a time coming when, because of the Spirit, you won't need an intercessor. You will ask freely and He will give freely. So there's two-way flow of resources coming to us, requests going out from us, intimate relationship, direct communication, intimacy, access to the Father because of the Spirit. And lastly, He'll give you peace. The message says, I've told you all this so that trusting me, you'll be unshakable and assured, deeply at peace. In this godless world, you will continue to experience difficulties, but take heart, I've conquered the world. This is the peace that passes all understanding, a solid, unshakable peace. Sounds good, doesn't it? And I could tell you stories about people experiencing that, or me experiencing that, but how much better to hear about each other experiencing that. So we're going to do a little split, a little bit like that. Truth, this sort of quarter. Joy, access to the Father, peace. And in those quarters, just divide into a smaller group as you feel comfortable with to share about how you've experienced that. And here's some questions to maybe prompt you, thinking about a time when you experienced it. How did you know it was the Spirit? It's not a competition. We're not looking for the most dramatic story. It might be a really quiet moment that only you and the Lord knew about. If the Holy Spirit is not alive and well in you, this is going to flop badly. But I am gambling that He is. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes if you just want to get in little clusters in those quarters, and then I'll pull you up and we'll wrap up together. Was that good? I eavesdropped on a few, and people struck by the intimacy of God's answer to prayer with the specific response, the timing that He didn't have to do, but He wanted to do to make it clear to us that it was Him, to encourage us, and it should encourage us. And what were those bookends, do you remember? So that we wouldn't fall away and that we would take heart. So do you think that sort of sharing makes us less likely to fall away and makes us take heart? Remembering God's at work. We forget answers to prayer so quickly, don't we? So essentially that chunky bit in the middle is the Holy Spirit, God in us. And Jesus saying, you're going to be sad because I'm leaving, but this is going to be better. I don't know about you, but sometimes I think, it would be pretty good to have Jesus here. Seems better. So either I'm overestimating how good it would be to have Jesus here. I don't think I'm doing that. Or, what's the other possibility? I'm underestimating the impact of the Spirit in our life, what it's supposed to do. Or maybe not listening or quenching. Maybe that's more likely. Okay. The Holy Spirit in us. Accessible. But there's noise, there's distractions. Takes effort, doesn't it, to tune in with busy lives. But think of the resources. The last year I prayed about something, had an opportunity, and I thought God said yes, and then I had a crisis of confidence. Talked to the men at prayer breakfast, and they were encouraging me, giving me some good advice, some support, but I didn't really feel very confident. Around the same time I saw a lady in the surgery, nice Christian lady, been a Christian all her life, very respectable churchgoer, had a nice Bible study. What she meant by nice was there's no difficult people there. You know those difficult people. So she lived in a nice big house with a nice respectable Christian husband, and she was actually moving into a gated community so keep all the unnice people out, and her whole life was like this series of nice, safe activities, and she was struggling with something that she thought God wanted her to do. And I was inside, I was feeling like, you're missing out. You know, what does your faith mean if it doesn't mean you can trust God? To do something you think He's asked you to do. Who was I talking to? There's nothing like the conviction of the Spirit, is it, when He puts His finger on your heart and touches you? It might be to comfort, it might be to convict you. It might be to say, will you trust me? Are you listening? There's nothing like it. Paul said, if you're wondering who the Christians are, it's really easy. They're the ones who are being led by the Spirit. How important is our relationship with the Spirit? Sounds pretty important, doesn't it? The Spirit is the one that confirms in our heart that we're saved. It's through Him that we can say, Abba, Father. That's the Spirit. Paul reduced our job description essentially to keeping in step with the Spirit. We talk about walking in the Spirit in any situation, in any person, at any time. Ask yourself, what is the Spirit up to here? How do I keep up? How do I not get in the way? That's essentially our job description, to try and keep up with the Spirit in all areas of our life, from moment to moment. That's going to be your homework, and it's the next bit you have to do too. Mike's going to